there's been a lot of recent debate over how and what history should be taught in schools. But one group has been largely left out of that conversation, as well as the history books.
It's important to teach disability history so people know that we are human too and deserve the rights.
It's an often forgotten civil rights movement, and the more we forget about these types of movement, the more risk we are at having to fight them again.
That's why, as GBH News senior producer Meghan Smith reports, the state branch of the disability services nonprofit Easterseals is mounting a grassroots campaign to require Massachusetts schools to teach disability history. Meghan, who reports on disability stories for GBH News, joins me now along with Tatiana Thomas. She is a member of the Easterseals campaign. Thank you both for being here.
Hi, Adam.
So, Meghan, how did you find out about this story?
Yeah, so as you said, I've been reporting on disability for a few years. And last summer, I went to an ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, celebration at City Hall in the city of Boston. And I met Tatiana and a few of her colleagues who were there to talk about their campaign to get more disability history taught. So that's where it started.
And my recollection, we were chatting before the show started, Tatiana, I think you said, was wearing some branded apparel, right?
Which she has now, yes.
And Tatiana, it says teach disability history on your sweatshirt.
That is correct. That's the name of what we do for Easterseals.
So, since you are part of the campaign, I'd love to know what prompted you to get involved with it.
So I wanted to get involved in the Teach Disability Histories because it's very important for education. A lot of people usually does not know what Teach Disability History is. There's a lot of important information there.
I'll confess, when I read the piece that you wrote about giving sort of a broad overview in the context of this push by Easterseals, I was a history major in college. I didn't learn anything.
It's amazing,
about this.
right? How much we don't know and how much it intersects with so many other parts of history.
Yeah, it was actually kind of embarrassing, to be honest. So, Tatiana, I know that as you push to ramp up the teaching of disability history here in Massachusetts in public schools, you and your colleagues are going around giving presentations, right? What's the pitch that you make?
So we do presentations virtual and in person. So you can go on our website and request. So we also talk about a lot of people usually does not know about the Inferno schools. The Inferno schools are still here. Those schools were for people with disabilities. The BCIL, the Easterseals are working together to talk to people that were in that concentration camp and to tell them why do we think it should be closed.
That was in Waltham, correct? Yes. And I think from the quiz that you put together on disability history, it was the first facility dedicated to purportedly caring for people with disabilities?
Yeah, I mean, Massachusetts has a long history of these institutions. We were first, and they also stayed open the longest, so there's a lot of local history to dig into here.
How do we compare to other states when it comes to the teaching of disability history?
Yeah, so there's a handful of states that do have laws in the books to require or mandate it in some way. And Massachusetts does designate October as Disability History Month in schools. And in 2018, the Massachusetts Department of Education did rehaul their standards to include some disability history. But a lot of people I talked to said teachers don't always know about this, and they have so much on their plate that they're not always able to take the time to integrate this if they want to.
And there's stuff that they can teach if they want to, curriculum support that's provided, but they have to opt in.
Yes.
Opt in, correct? Okay. I think we actually have a little bit from a documentary featuring, this is a documentary people can get from the state if they want, if educators want, featuring Judy Heumann. I will ask you to tell us a little more about Judy Heumann after we see this clip of her speaking.
Sounds good.
Disabled people feel that there is nothing else that we can do at this point but come to the streets and show the American public why we need their support and how we have a right to be able to work and raise families and get on and off the bus and on and off trains like everybody else. And that's what this is all about. We are members of society and we will talk the same right.
Why should people know, or what should people know about Judy Heumann?
Yeah, I mean, one person I talked to said every American should know who Judy Heumann is. She's often called the mother of the disability rights movement. She came up as a teacher and later was an activist. She led protests, sit-ins, and her activism eventually led to the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990. And then she worked for the Clinton and Obama administration, and she passed away a year ago. And it sent a big shockwave through the disability community.
Tatiana, did you say when we were chatting before we started doing the show that you actually met her?
Some of our members on our Teach Disability History campaign got to meet her.
That's awesome, yeah.
When disability history is taught, we just talked about Judy Heumann, what are some other highlights, whether it's key individuals, pivotal moments, I think we might have seen one in that documentary, or sub-movements within the broader disability rights movement that people should learn about?
Yeah, I mean, the people I talked to said it really does go back to the founding of America, you know, the Civil War, disabled veterans.
Shell shock, right?
Yeah. The founding of the VA, eugenics, and immigration. I really love how it intersects with the civil rights movement. Before the ADA was passed, there was a whole civil rights movement to get that passed. And there was a lot of active protests. For example, the 504 sit-in in the early 1970s, 100 people took over a federal building in San Francisco, which led to the enforcement of this act. And it was the largest takeover of a federal building in American history. And that's obviously, you know, relevant today with protests and everything going on. So I think there's a lot to learn from disability history.
Again, I sound like a broken record, but I was looking at these images and was blown away by all these seminal moments that I just didn't know about. And the fact that the ADA was only passed in 1990, which I should have remembered because I was alive then, graduating from high school, but I thought it was earlier.
It's not that old, and you know, a lot of people consider the ADA the floor. There's still a lot of activism going on, pushing for education, transportation, housing, and everything, so a lot to learn,
Tatiana, when you were a student in high school, you're a college student now, but when you were a student in high school, did you learn any of this history?
So I actually went to in-placement and outside placement, and no one taught us disability history for even schools that were trained for people with disabilities.
That's kind of remarkable. Why do you think it is important for everyone, whether it's people with disabilities, people who know people with disabilities, people who have no connection with the community, why is it important that this history be taught?
Disability history takes us a lot of different ways. Like, we first learn about Judy Heumann. There's also people like Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman had a traumatic brain injury. A lot of people usually does not know the history of her. Helen Keller even was a teacher. She was blind. There's a lot of histories that is important, like the ADA, the 504 Act, the Capital Call. There's so many important histories. We're trying to teach our students that we go out to present about disability histories. We have people that we know that are still fighting for disability history today.
Yeah, and you know, Adam, according to the CDC, 1 in 4 Americans have a disability of some kind. So that's a huge population that, you know, a lot of people say deserve to, you know, have their story told in history books. And, you know, some of the teachers I taught to said, learning this history can help people become advocates later. You know, it's Tatiana. She wants to be a disability advocate someday, and you're already working towards it. You know, learning that history of their own community can really help along that way.
Final question for you two. How much appetite does there seem to be when it comes to the people in power in Massachusetts for making the teaching of disability history something that is adding some teeth, making it mandatory in a way it isn't currently?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a small but growing movement. One person I talked to said it's overdue, and they're seeing more and more interest. I think, you know, ever since 2020, we've had a lot of conversations about diversity and equity in education. I think a lot of disability advocates are hoping this can be part of that conversation. What are you seeing as you talk to people?
What we're seeing as Teach Disability, we have been seeing that a lot of schools has not been taught Teach Disability. We're the professionals. We know how it is. We actually, a bunch of us actually wrote to the legislators to make Massachusetts the Teach Disability History Month in October. And we have been talking to, like, different people. Alex Green from Harvard University, he has invited us. We've been there. We have been talking to different people about disability history all over. There's also a curriculum, California, that is making one about disability history.
Yeah, so there are things popping up here and there. There's also something called Reform to Equal Rights. That's another curriculum that was developed by a Western Mass organization. So there are resources out there for teachers that are interested.
It's really fascinating. I urge anyone who is interested in this, and I definitely am, look for Meghan's story on our website, gbhnews.org. Look for Meghan's quiz. And Tatiana, if people want to learn more about this campaign, what should they do?
So you are able to go to Easterseals Massachusetts website and go under Teach Disability History. There you would see the short video you saw, and you can request a presentation. Our youth director, Desi Forte, will email you guys, and you can request one.
Excellent. All right, Tatiana, Meghan, thank you both.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.